531. It is a very warm welcome now to the Minister for Pacific Peoples, the Honourable Aupito Toisulusulu to Faisua William Seal for our regular talanoa. And of course, with Tongan Language Week the other week, Malo Aupito, Loa Fionga, Minister.
Malo lei, malo lo malie.
Thank you so much as always.
To you, Brian.
Oh, yes, of
course.
Of course. Now, as always, thank you so much for your time. We so greatly appreciate it. And let's begin with Tongan Language Week, another Tongan Language Week, albeit online, but a successful one in the bag.
Yes, I mean, Parliament was also occurring, albeit with limited numbers in Parliament. So many of my ministerial colleagues got the message to use it if they feel inclined and be supportive of it. And many of them did, Speaker, the Prime Minister and others. It was unfortunate because, Tongans are very loud and proud about the language and culture. And particularly this year, we've got a couple of Tongans who are bringing back gold medals from the Paralympics in Japan. Lisa Adams and Tupou Neiufi. And so, but I suppose when I reflect on it, the fact that we're holding it virtually because of lockdown levels that we're under, that actually gives the Tongan community a wide reach in promoting Tongan language. If it was face-to-face, we would, if it was the launch was in Auckland, it would just mainly be the Aucklanders. If the conclusion was in Wellington, it'd just be the Wellingtonians. But here, we've launched it on, and I do want to acknowledge Her Royal Highness Princess Melesi'uli Katapu Kalaniuvalu Fotofili for her continuing championing of Pacific well-being. I know, the Tongans own her. It is Her Royal Highness, but for us in the Pacific community, we see her as the symbol of majestic leadership. And I'm particularly grateful for the way that she responded at the Dawn Raids ceremony. Her rhetoric, her generosity of spirit, but, down to earth, straightforward talk, but her also loving nature and her request that we've got to mend the relationship. She not only spoke for the Tongan community, but I believe she spoke for all Pacific peoples and really lifted our spirits, made us all very, very proud. So, booyah to the Tongan community for a wonderful Tongan Language Week.
Oh, well, I've learnt a new Tongan word, booyah. Okay, then that's awesome. Now, were you able to attend any of the online events this year, Minister?
I did. I was part of the launch. It was quite difficult because I'm stuck at home and, so we did a bit of a video. I know my parliamentary colleagues, Anahila Kanangata Susuiki and Jenny Salisa, they've been intimately involved in a number of things. When we conclude it, we're also going to be recognizing our language and cultural champions. So Laulu will be undertaking that. Unfortunately, it clashes with another event that I've got I've in terms of Zoom meetings. But people have sent me stuff on social media and I've forwarded it on. I've put up some videos on my Instagram account, and that's what I mean by doing it virtually. There is so much reach that we're now able to promote the Tongan language on many platforms of the social media, but also we're reaching not just the people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, but across the Pacific region, all over the world globally. It's fantastic.
Mawhana. Now, an update, please, Minister, on vaccination rates amongst our Pasifika community and how we're faring currently?
Well, I suppose I can share with you the data for Friday. I mean, in a short way, whilst the numbers continue to grow, I think on Friday, 879 total, but what we're seeing is the new cases are reducing. And I think if they continue to reduce and remain quite low in the tens for the next week, that's a really good sign. It means that we're gradually ring fencing the spread of the virus. I think what's also positive is the numbers of people recovering is actually quite good as well. And so what we're seeing is that of Friday, 288 people had recovered. Unfortunately, during this outbreak, we did have one of the Koyas from North Shore who passed away as a consequence of infection with Delta. But the numbers of people recovering is a good sign. The numbers of people whom that are testing is a good sign. So on Friday, there was close to 8,000 people that are getting tested. And, we've got about 23 sites right across Auckland that are doing the testing. We continue to do surveillance testing. Our scientists continue to do the testing for our wastewater sewage. And for the rest of the country, those signs are really good. Auckland, however, continues to show positive sign, which we're aware of because of the quarantine facilities, but also because of people that test positive. So in short, the signs are good. We're heading in the right direction, but we still have to be very, very careful that we're not seeing any cases that come through because of people breaching their bubbles or breaching level 4 of restrictions. And I'm just asking our communities to please be patient. The only reason why we're having to stay at level 4 at this point in time is because we don't want the virus to continue spread. This is really an aggressive, very transmissible Delta, and it's very difficult to control. And the only way that we can control and prevent it from spreading is if we're staying home. Obviously, at level 4, those who are our essential workforce can do so if done safely, wearing masks, keeping social distancing, also going to shopping, wearing masks and keeping social distance, as well as those who are going to get tested or getting vaccinated or seeing a doctor. So I just appeal to our communities, be very cautious. We don't want anybody breaking their bubbles, breaking level 4 restrictions, and then that just means that we have to stay in level 4 for much longer. And we certainly don't want it to leak out of Auckland into the other parts of the country.
Auckland is, of course, waiting with bated breath on the announcement with regards to alert levels and whether we're going to remain in alert level 4. Is there anything you can share with our listeners, our viewers, where we possibly may be looking at?
Look, I can say to you, Brian, we all feel the way that Aucklanders are feeling. Particularly, I'm in Auckland. Most of my colleagues are in Auckland, and so we can feel it. And my colleagues also across our electorates are staying in touch with our communities. But I think everybody wants to do the right thing, and so all I can say is that we, as a government, assess. We receive the advice, the best advice from our health officials who are working tirelessly to serve our community, and our expert advisory grouping and the data that they collect on a daily basis. We assess that to guide our decisions. So unfortunately, we're not in that position yet. And so about what decisions we make, not only for Auckland, but for the rest of the country. So again, I appeal just to be patient with us. We don't want us to remain at level 4, but we have to be all confident, both our experts and our clinicians, as well as our politicians. We've got to all be confident that we have stopped and eliminated the transmission, that we've got things under control, before we start looking at other levels. I also want to remind people that we're dealing with Delta, the Delta virus. And so our settings, of course, when we started, when COVID hit us last year, our settings were designed from last year, and we were learning as we go. The arrival of Delta actually meant that we have to relook at our settings. Are they sufficient and fit for purpose? And we are relying on the evidence that our scientists provides with us. But like you, we I'm looking across to the other parts of the country, and they seem to be having a lot more freedom than we are. And I just remind them that we in Auckland are having to carry the heavy load. But be patient with us. This is what we're trying to do, is to make sure that we're not seeing more community transmission, and that we're confident that we have eliminated community transmission, and that there's no potential for that continuing to grow.
Now, with regards to a recent $26 million package boost to support Pacific communities during this current outbreak, can you tell us more on that, please, Minister?
Yeah, our Pacific providers are really our heroes, day in, day out. They're working at the coalface, supporting our communities with testing, with vaccination, or with all sorts of needs that they encounter with our community. Food support, mental health support, helping people to cope with the lack of income. And yet we still got the ongoing bills, and making connections with those in need with the relevant agencies that can provide that support. And so the 26 million is to provide further support to that work that our Pacific providers are providing. So the bulk of that money will go to them, 18 million. And that's, whilst the focus is on Auckland, to support groups like South Seas, the Course Collective, the Whānau, the Pacific Home Care, all of those groups, many more across Wakatautua, etc. We'll also be supporting Wellington, but we're also wanting to make sure that we provide money across the motu, from up north all the way down to Invercargill, so that our providers who are on the ground can continue to accelerate their efforts to get our communities vaccinated. And 5 million of that will be directed to the district health boards in Auckland and Wellington, so that they can continue to support mobile outreach to some of our groups, to support also the pop-ups and the drive-in vaccination and testing stations that are popping up across Auckland. And then 3 million of that we're going to be providing to make sure that we're providing communications, not just in English, but in our different languages, on a number of platforms, so that all our communities can get the correct information from our health professionals and our clinicians to keep everybody safe. Because I would hate for people to follow all that other rubbish from the anti-vaxxers. The vaccine is a layer of protection to prevent you from getting really, really sick if you're infected, and prevent, hopefully, death. Without that vaccine, people are basically putting themselves up at risks, at harm's way. And we all know somebody now in this latest outbreak that has experienced what it's like to be infected with the COVID Delta, and it's not a good thing from what I've seen recently on TV.
We'll finish with this. The country sadly was brought to a standstill earlier this month with the Lynn Mall tragedy that took place on the 3rd of September. Your thoughts, Minister?
I was shocked and just felt so blindsided. We've all been focused on keeping our community safe from the Delta virus. And then for that to happen, I just couldn't believe it. You know, I wasn't quite sure when it happened, whether that was real or not. So, and then when the reality of it hit home, my heart just went out to the victims, those and their families, and to those who were in the vicinity of all of that. You know, I saw somebody posted something up on social media at the time, and I don't know, I just felt really uneasy and uncomfortable with all of it. And so, you know, it's difficult to sort of to try and find the right words. What do you say in something like this has happened at a time when the country is already under crisis and under stress in our responding to Delta virus? But I'm very glad of what our Prime Minister said. You know, this wasn't a faith, this wasn't an ethnic, this wasn't any faith-based group or grouping. And I suppose that was important because sometimes the worst comes out in our people. And I'm meaning our people in New Zealand. We sometimes find it easy just to point the finger and blame anybody and everybody that may be associated. I think we have to remember this was an individual person that acted in this regard. And his beliefs and why he did this, that's not New Zealand. That's not us. And I know also that some of our own Pacific communities were starting to sort of display on social media some of the prejudice and discriminatory commentary. And I just think it's important that we just stand together and say, point the finger at the individual that did the harm and not try and paint everybody else, whether it's not paint any religion, not paint any faith, not paint any ethnic community. But, you know, and that kind of behavior is the same kind of behavior we saw in Christchurch. And that's not New Zealand. That's not us. We can't accept that.
The Minister for Pacific Peoples, the Honourable Aupito Toisulusulu tō Whaisua William Seal. A pleasure as always, Lawa Fionga, Aupito, and thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward to our next talanoa in a few weeks' time. Whaftai, ia manuia.
Whaftai, stay safe everybody. Kia kaha.